Welcome to Chicago Style Parenting, where we delve into parenting life in Chicago and uncover the resources, information, and support that Chicago families need. I'm Amy Johnson, the Executive Director of Neighborhood Parents Network.
I'm Satara, Director of Marketing, Content, and Social Strategy at MPN. We're excited to talk with today's guest, Sarah Pooh, about a question that was submitted by an MPN member. How do I talk to other kids about my child's developmental difference or disability?
Sarah is a licensed clinical social worker who has been working with children and families in a wide variety of settings since 2008. She holds expertise in infant and early childhood development, infant assessment, and parent-child therapy. Sarah was formerly a therapist and the director of the Erickson Institute Center for Children and Families, which served children under 8 years old and their families through relational and play therapy. She's an adjunct professor in the Erickson Institute's Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Certification Program. Sarah earned her master's degree in clinical social work from the University of Chicago. She holds a certificate in infant and early childhood mental health from the Erickson Institute and is a member of the Illinois Association of Infant Mental Health. Sarah has her own therapy practice located in Lincoln Square. Sarah, you've presented for MPM before, and we are so happy to talk with you again today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and nice to meet both you, Amy and Satara.
Great. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Sarah, why is it important to talk with children about differences and disabilities from a young age?
Yeah, we should always be thinking about ways to help children understand that not everyone's the same, that differences exist in many ways. The CDC estimates that 1 in 6 children have one or more conditions considered a developmental disability or developmental delay. So we know that our kids are interacting with children and adults with differences and disability. In talking with kids, we want to emphasize that disability and differences are part of the person. It's not their entire identity. And we want to point out that despite differences, people with disabilities have many things in common with their peers. We also want to normalize having these discussions and normalizing young children asking questions and exploring their curiosity. It's okay for children to be curious. We want them to be curious about the world and about so many other things. And so by having these conversations early, by reading books about differences early, or seeing different types of people in disability in children's programming, we are normalizing that and giving permission for kids to ask questions.
Wonderful. What kinds of feelings often come up for parents when thinking about talking about their own child's disability with others? And how can parents process any of those feelings they might be having?
Yeah. Before we are talking with kids or talking about others about your child's disability, I think it's important to kind of check in with yourself first and see what feelings might be coming up. That could be sadness, anger, depression, embarrassment, some grief and loss, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed. It's important to find ways to explore that, to get some support, and ensure that you're ready to have these conversations with your child, with their friends, with their classmates, teachers, people at the park or out in the community. And so this may look like finding a friend or loved one who you can talk to about this, talking with your child's social worker or counselor, looking for a support group. I know NPN has some of those available, or starting a therapeutic relationship with a therapist or counselor.
Great, thank you. At what age should adults start talking to children about their disability or developmental difference?
Yeah. The younger, the better. There is no like right exact age. I think figuring out what is right for you and what is right for your child. I mean, that first piece about where is the adult in this process is the first step. But I think really checking in with what is your child's cognitive and language development and how much do they understand and and that will guide what that conversation will look like. This is also something that I think for young children who have developmental differences and disabilities is for parents to check in with their team, with their child's therapist about what they think your child should know, or even help you come up with that language that you can use.
This question came up because an MPN member was saying that she was at a water park with her daughter who has physical and developmental differences. And she just didn't know what to say to the other kids who were in the water, looking at her daughter or trying to interact with her daughter, or talking to themselves. And she just wanted some things that she could say to the kids around her that was welcoming and friendly and explanatory. So what do you have some helpful phrases or scripts that parents can model or teach to children when talking about a disability?
Yeah. I think depending on the age and depending on the comfort level, I think there's kind of two pieces, which is one is is there a name for your child's developmental disability or developmental difference? Does your child, is this a child who has autism or a child who has cerebral palsy, a child who has maybe even a neurodivergence like ADHD? And do you want to use that word? I think it's a good thing for you to think about. Do you want to use a word to label this? But I think more importantly for kids like at a water park, which is like, how does that then impact them in this space? What do you think those kids are noticing? Are those kids noticing that your child is sitting rather than standing, or not moving through the water in the same way, or they're in a wheelchair or another device or a device that supports them in sitting? And so if there is something that you can call out, that you can see, that you imagine these other children might see, I think giving an explanation about why that might be. It might just be, oh, her core muscles aren't as strong, and so she has a hard time sitting up, and so we use this tool to help her sit in the water and play. Or her legs don't work the same as yours, and so running and playing in the water, the way you do, it just looks differently. She's going to stay lower to the ground, or she's not going to move as fast. I think talking about what that is, I think for a child who might have autism, you might say that means her brain and her body are processing information differently. And so she's a little more sensitive to loud noises, and she's covering her ears, or she likes to move her body around in this particular way or spin because it feels good for her body. This is what makes her body feel good. Those are some scripts to use.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is super helpful. How can parents encourage and normalize curiosity without encouraging intrusive or rude questions?
Yeah. I think this goes back to your first question, and I think really like starting that conversation from an early age. But I think there's some phrasing around like there's no such thing as a dumb question. There can be the right time, there can be the right wording, the right space. I think this happens a lot for young kids, and I think we all, as the adults, have to give some grace and understanding that little kids are pretty literal, and they don't even know that what they're asking might be offensive to the other person. I mean, I've definitely been like in public spaces and or an elevator with somebody, and the kid goes, "Why is that person in a wheelchair?" And oftentimes that makes the grown-up feel embarrassed because their child has asked that question. And it might feel embarrassing for the person in the wheelchair, but it also, depending on your response to that, might make it feel harder for them. So I think acknowledging that, oh, you're wondering why they're in a wheelchair, that's a great question. My guess is, that maybe there's something going on with their body that's making it hard for them to walk right now. But I think being willing to respond, or if it feels inappropriate to say, that's a good question, let's talk about it later. And then you might share why, depending on the age, right? Especially if it's a little bit of an older child, older than 5, that's can maybe think about how those might be questions that we notice and we can ask in another space or in privacy.
That's a really good reminder that kids are so literal, and they don't know that things are coming across rude necessarily. It's not their intention. And even kids who are older, who we might think understand that, understanding comes in kind of in waves, and it different ages for different kids. And so to give kids grace is a good reminder. I mean, as the child gets older, I know they, they they can learn faster. Uh, so anyway, what are some good resources or books for kids and parents to learn more about talking to children about disabilities?
Yeah. I think one of my go-to and favorite resources, I think PBS does a really nice job with this. They have a website about understanding different abilities. And on that website, they have kind of a range of all of their programming and particular episodes that might showcase a character or a storyline that is connected to differences and disability. I think for little kids, Daniel Tiger does this really well, and they have books as well. They have particular episodes. They have characters that display differences, and you can read that physically as well as watching a show. I think some of the children's hospitals also do a nice job of having some resources on their website. In Chicago, that's going to be Lurie Children's, and I know that they have a new kind of library system that they are starting that has some materials that people can share and check out. But in looking, I think that there's some other cities and children's hospitals that do this really well. Actually, Seattle Children's Hospital was the one that I was noticing had some nice information on their website at seattlechildrens.org. But I also think one of the best resources that maybe goes underutilized at times is like your child's school and your child's team, particularly those early intervention providers who have been doing this for many, many years. This is like what they love to do, and over time they have accumulated so many resources. And so I think asking and getting that directly from them is a great tool.
Yeah, it's nice to know that parents don't have to go too far or look really outside of their immediate network to find some support. Now, if a parent is still left feeling unsure or maybe even a little overwhelmed, what's one small step that they can take after listening to this episode?
Yeah. I think finding some support. I think that is really like the best piece of advice I would give is that don't sit with it alone. You don't have to sit with this alone. You can really kind of thinking about who is your support team, but also what other professionals can you add to your team. I think for many parents who have children with disabilities, it's a logistical nightmare at times. There's lots of doctor's appointments. There's lots of therapy appointments if their child's also in early learning or in a school setting. And so I think parents often leave themselves for the last little bit of time. Their stuff gets pushed to the end. And I think it can't be, and I know that's easier said than done, but I would say making space and time for yourself to get the support and help you need, whether that is through some individual therapy, a support group, or just a group of parents or people that you get together with to talk about life, to get vulnerable with. Because we shouldn't have to go at this alone. We're not meant to.
Yeah. So just trying to summarize what we talked about here, you're encouraging parents to find support, like you just said, recognize our own feelings about our child's development or speaking with, or developmental differences in general. If you have a child who doesn't have a developmental difference, but you want to help them understand the people around them and be polite and be curious and inclusive. So recognize your own feelings no matter which child you're parenting.
Mm-hmm.
and then use the resources in your community. You listed some great resources, and we'll put those in our show notes so parents can access them with just a click. Do you have any final advice for parents who are just starting this journey of supporting their child and educating others, which is really a big task?
Yeah, there's some other things that I was thinking about that I think are important to consider. These are kind of questions to ask yourself about your child, and that would be, how do they understand their body, brain, ability, disability? Um, I think just like thinking about how do we set the stage for talking to children about whether that is their physical ability, their mental abilities, emotional regulation, all of those things. And then deciding whether if you have labeled or named their disability and how that impacts them. Does it feel helpful to label it at this time or not? And then really helping them understand and have language about their own disability. So, right, there's this piece in talking with them, which part of it is about giving them a sense of ownership and understanding about their own body, about their own differences and disability. And then the next step of that is how might they want to talk about this with others in their lives, or how might they want you to talk about it with others in their lives. And so it is this kind of multi-step, multi-pronged approach, and really starting with yourself as the caregiver, your child, and then thinking about the rest of the community. I think we don't want the first time that your child is hearing you describe their disability be that you are describing it to somebody else, that you haven't had that conversation with them, and then you're at the water park or at the playground, and they hear you say, oh, well, she has cerebral palsy, and they're like, I've never heard that in my life. Or what does that mean? I heard you use a word that is surprising to me or doesn't have much meaning to me. And so I think there can also be, as children get a little bit older and understand their disability, that it can feel empowering to name it as something, to have an understanding of it, because we know that children are taking in the world and taking in interactions with others, with their peers, and they are also noticing that they are different. Just like those children are noticing that your child might be playing differently, your child might also, depending on their disability and where they are developmentally, notice that they are playing differently than the other children. And so I think helping them understand that and kind of inviting them to co-construct a narrative around this for themselves, but also for others in their lives.
It's a lot of work to do this work on ourselves first, to reflect on all these things first, but it sounds like it's really important and worth it.
Yeah, I especially love the part of having your child kind of co-author, how you're describing this or speaking about it with other people, so they have some ownership and they even feel confident tackling that conversation, maybe when they're not with you and they're on their own describing or answering questions from their peers. So I think that is super helpful, along with everything that you've covered today, Sarah. So thank you so much. If families want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah. You can email me. It's sarahpoo, LCSW, at gmail.com. That's SARAPHOU, LCSW, at gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. We will put your email address in our show notes as well. So parents, if you'd like to talk to Sarah and follow up on any of the things we've talked about here, you can just go to our show notes and reach out with a click of your mouse or a tap of your finger. Listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Tell us what else you'd like to hear about and who you would like to hear from by clicking the link in our show notes. Hit the subscribe button to stay in the loop. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today and talking with us about this. It was really valuable to both Satara and I think to any parent listening. And we will see you and all of our listeners around the neighborhood very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.